In the high-stakes world of professional sports, athletes often find themselves navigating financial decisions that can greatly impact their futures. While many NBA players secure lucrative contracts, some have chosen to bet on themselves, taking risks in pursuit of that bigger bag. However, not every gamble pays off, and a number of players have faced significant losses after betting on themselves. Join me as we discuss how these NBA players fumbled the bag. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell for more NBA videos, and follow me on Twitter. Now let's get to the video. First up, DeMarcus Cousins. DeMarcus Boogie Cousins was one of the most dominant players during the 2010s. He was the number 5 pick out of Kentucky and a 4-time All-Star, and although he had emotional outbursts at times, Cousins was a bona fide baller. One of the best centers in the league, he played 7 seasons with the Kings, averaging a double-double in each of the last 4 seasons before being traded to the Pelicans after the Kings decided they did not want to extend DeMarcus Cousins, which would have likely cost them 5 years and $200 million. But in New Orleans, Cousins would form one of the most dynamic duos in the NBA with Anthony Davis. He called them Fire and Ice, and they were successful until DeMarcus Cousins got hurt. But he was offered a 2-year, $40 million contract extension after tearing his Achilles. But he declined that, betting on himself, and will ultimately end up signing a 1-year, $5 million contract with the Golden State Warriors. Next up, Joe Smith. Joe Smith was the number 1 overall pick in the 1995 NBA draft, selected by the Golden State Warriors, where he would play 3 seasons. And he was highly productive, averaging almost 20 points per game in each of the first 3 seasons in the league. And because of this, the Warriors offered him an $80 million contract extension. But surprisingly, he rejected the offer as he wanted to return to the East Coast and was ultimately traded to the 76ers, where he stayed until free agency. And during the lockout in 1999, Smith shockingly signed a $1 million minimum contract with the Minnesota Timberwolves. But it turned out that the Wolves and Smith had an illegal under-the-table agreement, which had never been done in professional basketball before, which would have Smith continue to sign 1-year minimal deals for 3 seasons just so the Timberwolves could get his bird rights, and then they can offer him an $86 million contract while going above the salary cap. But the NBA found out about the agreement and voided Smith's contract altogether, ending his tenure with the Wolves, and he would go on to play for the Pistons, Bucks, Hawks, Cavaliers, Thunder, Bulls, Nuggets, and Lakers before eventually retiring with the Nets in 2012. Holy cow, would have fumbled, my guy. Next up, Montrezl Harrell. Selected in the 2nd round of the 2015 NBA draft by the Houston Rockets. Now, his career would get off to a slow start, but after he was traded to the Los Angeles Clippers in 2017, things would pick up for him, as he would average 18 points and 7 rebounds per game coming off the bench for the Clippers, and would receive the 6th Man of the Year award during that season. And with free agency coming up shortly thereafter, he couldn't have picked a better time to have his best season of his career. He had just picked up the 6th Man of the Year award. He was entering his prime at 26 years old, and he was a free agent. I mean, check, check, check. Things couldn't have gone any better. And he was offered a 4-year, $80 million contract from the Charlotte Hornets. But he wanted to compete for an NBA title, so he ultimately turned down that offer and signed with the Lakers on a 2-year, $18 million contract. But after the Lakers won the championship in the previous year, injuries caught up to them. And when Anthony Davis went down with a growing injury, the Lakers would wind up getting eliminated in the very first round in the 2021 playoffs by the Phoenix Suns. And eventually, he would be traded from the Lakers to the Wizards and then to the Hornets. So he would still end up on the team that once offered him that huge contract, but only to play on a much cheaper deal at $3.2 million. Wow, what a fall. And I'm not saying he made the wrong decision to play for the Lakers. I mean, they were the defending champions at the time, and I'm sure he had other reasons to stay in Los Angeles. But as the great Floyd Mayweather once said, your kids can't eat your legacy. Next up, Nerlens Noel. Selected 6th overall by the New Orleans Pelicans in the 2013 NBA draft, and was traded on draft night to the 76ers. And after playing 4 seasons and there being a complete logjam at center, the 76ers decided to trade Noel to the Dallas Mavericks where he would average 8 points, 6 rebounds, and 1 block in 22 games. Were those numbers impressive to you? Now, I know numbers aren't everything, but my goodness, those aren't numbers that warrant a big contract. But beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And to Mavs owner Mark Cuban, they were impressive. And he was offered a 4-year, $70 million contract extension. Now, you would think a guy that has no offensive bag and defense that isn't as good as it was projected to be would be elated to get a contract extension of that proportion. Because to me, that's a clear overpayment, like $70 million over. That would be a no-brainer and sign to most of us, correct? But no, he turned it down after his then agent Rich Paul convinced him he was worth much more. Now, how he saw this is beyond me. Noel would ultimately play the next season on a qualifying offer, only making $4 million. He then signed a 2-year minimum deal with the Oklahoma City Thunder the following summer, and eventually signed with the Knicks in 2020. He would end up filing a lawsuit against Rich Paul, claiming he lost $58 million in potential earnings. But this came after Paul filed a grievance with the Players Association, claiming that Noel owed him $200,000 in commission when he signed with the Knicks. Noel agreed to play the $200,000. Until this day, his career earnings of $45 million don't come close to the $70 million he was offered in 2017. Next up, Latrell Sprewell, the 24th overall pick in the 1992 NBA draft. He was a 4-time All-Star, All-NBA first team, All-Defensive second team, and All-Rookie second team selection. He would play 6 seasons with the Warriors and 4 seasons with the Knicks before coming to the Timberwolves, becoming one of the most pivotal players for the Wolves during the 2003 season. And while Kevin Garnett grabbed most of the attention during his MVP season, Sprewell had one of his best performances behind Kevin Garnett. He was a key figure for the Wolves in the Western Conference Finals in 2004, and because of these performances, the Timberwolves offered him a 3-year, $21 million contract. But for whatever reason, Sprewell shockingly rejected the offer, stating that the money on the table wasn't enough to provide for his family. But did his family stop eating or something? Because he wouldn't sign another NBA contract, and after the 2005 season, his career in the league had came to an end. I'm not sure what he feeds his family on a nightly basis, but it wasn't enough for him to use as a reason to reject 3 years, $21 million, especially back in 2004. But he did decide to play in the 2005 season, as he would let his game do the talking with 1 more year left on his current deal. But his game had regressed, and he was only offered the mid-level exception and vet minimum deals for multiple teams. But he valued his pride much more, and we would never see Sprewell in the NBA ever again. And in my opinion, to this day, this is the worst contract failure in the NBA history. A lot of these players go from rejecting big money to signing for little money, but none of these guys ended up not signing for any money. Next up, Victor Oladipo. The number 2 pick in the 2013 NBA draft, selected by the Orlando Magic. He went on to be on the All-NBA Rookie First Team, 2-time All-Star, All-NBA Third Team, All-NBA First Team, NBA Most Improved Player, and NBA Steals Leader during his career. He was traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder in 2016 and then traded to the Indiana Pacers in 2017. He became a first-time All-Star and led the league in steals, and was named to the All-Defensive First Team and the All-NBA Third Team, and won the Most Improved Player award in his first season with Indiana. And despite an injury-riddled 2019 season, including a season-ending injury, in January he was still named an Eastern Conference All-Star reserve for the 2nd straight year. In 2020, Oladipo was still playing for the Indiana Pacers as they had a strong young core emerging. And although his place in the franchise had slightly taken a back seat, the Pacers still made him a strong offer, 4 years, $112 million. But Oladipo rejected that offer, and he was sent to Houston in the James Harden trade. But it gets better. The Rockets offered Oladipo a $45 million contract over 2 years, and he rejected that offer as well and was traded again, but this time to the Miami Heat, and an injury cost him to suit up for the rest of the season. He will ultimately resign with the Heat on a 1-year, $2 million contract, and he's perhaps the only player to ever reject a big money contract offer twice in a single season and did not cash in on any of it. I just don't get it. Next up, Dennis Schroer. Now these days, when you hear about somebody fumbling the bag, the first person you think of is Dennis Schroer. He is like the poster boy of fumbling the bag in this day and age. And during the 2019 season, where he was the runner-up for 6th Man of the Year and had only 1 year left on his contract, The Lakers decided to offer him a lucrative contract extension, one I personally didn't think was the right move at the time. But LA did, and they offered him a 4-year, $84 million contract. But he rejected the deal, thinking he could make around $100 million in free agency. But his subpar play in the regular season, and even worse in the playoffs, caused his value to go down the drain. And I mean literally down the drain at a very rapid pace. And he would ultimately end up signing with the Celtics on a 1-year deal worth $5 million and end up right back on the Lakers a season later. And after having a pretty good resurgence, he would sign a 2-year, $26 million deal with the Toronto Raptors this past offseason. Now that's a far cry from the $100 million he was hoping for, and I doubt he'll ever see anything close to $84 million he was offered back in 2019. All isn't lost in the Schroer house. And after being on the end of jokes and memes for years, Schroer came out and spoke about the situation on January 9th, 2024. He said his former representation advised him to reject the offer. I would have signed it. I would have never just left money on the table. My mom didn't raise me that way. Very interesting, Schroer. Very interesting.